Welcome, miladies of inestimable value. The hardest walls to break down are the ones built in silence. Sigmas don't put up flashy barriers or loud defenses. They construct quiet fortresses out of independence, logic, and a refusal to settle for mediocrity. Science even backs this up. Studies show that highly independent individuals often have fewer but deeper connections. But here's the twist. Trying to get close to a Sigma is like trying to hug a cactus. You want to, but you're not sure if you'll bleed for it. These enigmatic personalities aren't hard to reach because they're cruel or cold. No, it's because they've mastered the art of selective connection. They're the human equivalent of a VIP club, exclusive, fascinating, and slightly intimidating. Let's dive into why Sigmas are some of the toughest people to truly know, and why, once you do, it feels like winning the emotional lottery. Number 1. They don't believe in forced connections. Sigmas have an unshakable rule when it comes to relationships. If it's not real, they don't want it. They're not the kind of people who strike up meaningless conversations just to fill the silence or fake a connection for the sake of politeness. To them, a forced bond is a waste of energy, and they can sense it from a mile away. The moment they detect a hint of superficiality, they quietly bow out. It's not out of rudeness. It's because their time and emotional bandwidth are too precious to spend on something that feels empty. What makes this trait so intriguing is their almost magnetic ability to resist the pressure to conform. Most people feel the need to connect for the sake of social norms, but Sigmas would rather endure awkward silence than pretend to enjoy a conversation that doesn't resonate. This often confuses people who expect instant rapport or casual friendliness. To the Sigma, relationships should spark naturally, like a rare and unexpected moment of clarity, not something you create out of obligation or boredom. This unyielding authenticity can make them hard to get close to. While others might engage in small talk or entertain shallow interactions to fit in, Sigmas are perfectly content sitting in their own space, waiting for someone who truly gets them. They're not cold, they're filtering. If someone doesn't match their energy or share their depth, the connection simply doesn't stick. For Sigmas, there's no such thing as just getting along. It's either genuine or it's nothing. This leaves many people scratching their heads, wondering why their charm or effort didn't work. But for the Sigma, the answer is simple. If the connection has to be forced, it's not worth having. Number 2, they're brutally honest about what they don't need. Sigmas have a razor-sharp understanding of what truly matters in their relationships. They don't waste time clinging to people just for the sake of company or filling a void. If someone isn't contributing to their life in a meaningful way, whether that's through mutual respect, genuine support, or intellectual depth, they'll gracefully step back. It's not personal, it's strategy. They view relationships as investments of time and energy, and if the return doesn't justify the effort, they'll quietly withdraw without drama or fuss. This brutally honest approach can come off as cold to those who don't understand it. But for Sigmas, it's the ultimate form of self-respect. They refuse to carry dead weight or entertain relationships that feel one-sided. It's not about being heartless, it's about being intentional. Their life is built on quality over quantity, and that extends to the people they keep around. What makes this even more fascinating is how subtly they manage this process. There's no grand announcement, no explosive argument, and definitely no lingering resentment. They simply let the relationship fade away, often leaving the other person wondering what went wrong. In reality, nothing went wrong. The connection just didn't meet the Sigma's standards for depth or reciprocity. This level of discernment makes them both highly selective and fiercely independent. They don't need validation, constant attention, or meaningless interactions to feel whole. Instead, they focus their energy on the few people who genuinely enhance their lives. It's not about being difficult to get close to. It's about ensuring that when someone does get close, it's because they truly belong there. For Sigmas, relationships aren't about convenience. They're about authenticity, and they won't settle for anything less. Number 3, they see relationships as risks. For Sigmas, relationships aren't something they dive into blindly. They're calculated risks. Every new connection comes with a cost: time, energy, vulnerability, and sometimes even their peace of mind. Sigmas know this all too well, which is why they approach relationships like a high-stakes poker game. They weigh the potential benefits against the risks with a level of precision that can seem cold to outsiders. If the payoff doesn't look worth the investment, they'll fold before the first round is even played. This hyper-analytical approach isn't about being unkind or unfeeling, it's about self-preservation. Sigmas know how much chaos the wrong person can bring into their life, and they're simply not willing to take that chance unless they see undeniable value in the connection. It's not enough for someone to be charming or well-intentioned. Sigmas need proof of loyalty, depth, and alignment with their values before they even consider letting someone past their inner walls. Their reluctance to take emotional risks often makes them seem distant or aloof, but it's actually a sign of how deeply they value their own peace. Sigmas are acutely aware of how draining toxic relationships can be, so they're not about to let just anyone disrupt their carefully curated balance. To some, this makes them seem hard to approach, but to Sigmas, it's a necessary filter. Ultimately, their guardedness isn't about rejecting people. It's about avoiding unnecessary damage. They'd rather be perceived as distant than gamble on someone who could throw their life into chaos. For a Sigma, relationships are only worth pursuing when they feel secure, meaningful, and aligned with who they are. Anything less is simply not worth the risk. Number 4, they're often misunderstood. Sigmas exist in a world where their motives and behaviors are often misread by others. Their natural aloofness is mistaken for indifference or rejection, but in truth it's just how they navigate life, calm, observant, and deliberate. They're not the type to shower people with overt attention or bend over backward to prove they care, which leaves many people scratching their heads. To the untrained eye, this can seem dismissive, but for Sigmas, it's simply their way of conserving energy for what truly matters. Their independence gets misinterpreted as arrogance, as though they think they're too good for the crowd. In reality, Sigmas aren't looking down on anyone. They're just incredibly comfortable being on their own. They don't need external validation or constant interaction to feel complete, which confuses people who are wired differently. This misunderstanding often creates a gap between them and others, but Sigmas rarely lose sleep over it. Then there's their solitude, which people love to label as loneliness. But for a Sigma, solitude isn't a void, it's a sanctuary. They're most alive when they're in their own company, exploring their thoughts and ideas without the noise of the world interrupting. People see their preference for alone time and assume they must be sad or disconnected, but nothing could be further from the truth. What's fascinating is that Sigmas don't feel the need to correct these misconceptions. They're not out here campaigning for people to get them. If someone misunderstands their intentions or personality, so be it. Sigmas don't waste energy explaining themselves to people who aren't willing to dig deeper. Their priority isn't being understood by everyone, it's staying true to themselves, even if that means being an enigma to most. Number 5, they're constantly evaluating their circle. Sigmas treat their relationships like a finely tuned engine. If something isn't running smoothly, they'll take a hard look and figure out what needs to change. This doesn't mean they're cold-hearted or transactional. It means they're deeply intentional about the people they allow into their lives. Even if you've earned a spot in their inner circle, it's not a lifetime membership. They're constantly evaluating whether the connection is still meaningful, balanced, and aligned with their values. Sigmas don't cling to relationships out of habit or nostalgia. They believe that every connection should have a purpose, whether it's mutual growth, support, or genuine companionship. When they sense that a relationship has become stagnant, one-sided, or emotionally draining, they'll quietly start to distance themselves. It's not a dramatic exit. Sigmas rarely do anything with unnecessary fanfare. Instead, they'll gradually phase out of the dynamic, leaving the other person wondering what changed. What sets Sigmas apart is their unapologetic ability to prioritize their well-being. They know that holding on to toxic or unfulfilling relationships only drags them down, so they don't hesitate to cut ties when necessary. This might seem ruthless to some, but to Sigmas it's a simple matter of self-respect. They refuse to pour energy into connections that no longer serve them, or allow themselves to stay stuck in relationships out of obligation. This habit of reevaluating their circle isn't about perfectionism or high standards for the sake of it. It's about creating a life filled with authenticity and depth. Sigmas are loyal, but their loyalty comes with a condition. The relationship has to stay real, reciprocal, and meaningful. The moment it stops being that, they'll walk away, not out of malice, but out of an unwavering commitment to their own peace and purpose. Number 6, they detest clinginess. For Sigmas, clinginess is the red flag that stops everything. It's not just a mild annoyance. It's a direct violation of their core values. They thrive on independence, both in themselves and in the people they surround themselves with. The moment someone starts clinging, whether it's through constant texts, excessive need for validation, or an inability to function without their presence, it triggers an instinctual retreat. To a Sigma, clinginess feels like a suffocating weight, and they won't hesitate to cut loose from it. What makes clinginess so unbearable to them isn't just the inconvenience, it's what it represents. Sigmas see neediness as a lack of self-sufficiency, and that's something they struggle to tolerate. They respect people who can stand on their own, who have their own passions, goals, and sense of self. Dependence, on the other hand, clashes with everything they value in a connection. They're not looking for someone to complete them or lean on them constantly. They're looking for equals who can walk beside them without demanding to be carried. This doesn't mean Sigmas are heartless or unwilling to give attention. In fact, they can be incredibly caring and supportive when they feel a genuine bond. But the key word here is genuine. If they sense that someone is demanding their time out of insecurity rather than true connection, it drains them. And for Sigmas, their energy is sacred. They're not going to waste it on someone who turns every interaction into a tug-of-war for attention. Ultimately, they view clinginess as a sign of imbalance, a dynamic where one person takes more than they give. For a Sigma, that's a deal-breaker. They're fiercely independent, and they expect the same in return. If someone can't meet them on that level, the door quietly closes, and they move on without hesitation. Number 7, they keep their inner world a mystery. Sigmas are masters of controlled disclosure. They let people see only what they want them to see, carefully curating the version of themselves that fits the context. It's not about being deceptive. It's about maintaining control over their personal narrative. Even if you've known a Sigma for years, there's a good chance you've only scratched the surface of who they truly are. They hold their inner world close, sharing pieces of it sparingly and only with those they trust implicitly. This tendency to guard their deeper selves isn't a sign of insecurity or a lack of openness. Instead, it's a protective measure, born out of a deep understanding of how valuable their thoughts, emotions, and vulnerabilities are. To a Sigma, giving someone access to their inner world is like handing over a key to a vault. It's not something they do lightly. They've likely learned through experience that not everyone deserves that level of trust, so they err on the side of caution. What makes this even more fascinating is how effortlessly they manage to keep people intrigued. Their selective sharing creates an air of mystery that others can't help but be drawn to. People might spend years trying to figure them out, only to realize that the Sigma has revealed just enough to keep them engaged while keeping their true essence hidden. This enigmatic quality often leaves others both captivated and frustrated. They want to get closer, to understand what makes the Sigma tick, but the harder they try, the more elusive the Sigma becomes. It's not that they're playing games, it's just how they operate. For a Sigma, maintaining a sense of privacy and mystery isn't a strategy. It's second nature. Their inner world is theirs alone, and only the rarest of connections earn a glimpse inside. Number 8, they're skeptical about people's motives. For Sigmas, trust is never handed out freely. It's earned, and even then it's under constant review. They've learned, often the hard way, that people's actions rarely come without strings attached. Someone's charm or kindness doesn't automatically translate into loyalty or good intentions. Instead, Sigmas operate with a natural skepticism, dissecting every gesture, word, and interaction to uncover the underlying motive. To others, this might seem paranoid, but to a Sigma, it's simply self-preservation. Their guarded nature isn't about being pessimistic, it's about being realistic. Sigmas understand that not everyone has pure intentions, and they refuse to be blindsided by hidden agendas. This caution doesn't mean they're incapable of forming deep connections. It just means those connections come with time, patience, and a lot of observation. They're the type to test the waters before diving in, ensuring that the relationship is built on authenticity rather than manipulation or self-interest. This skepticism isn't just about protecting their peace, it's also about protecting their energy. Sigmas don't have the patience to deal with emotional games or ulterior motives, and they won't waste their time on someone who can't be upfront. Their ability to sniff out insincerity is almost uncanny, and once they sense even a whiff of it, they'll shut the door without looking back. Some might find this exhausting or overly analytical, but for Sigmas, it's the only way to navigate a world filled with hidden agendas. Their trust, once earned, is rock solid, but getting to that point is no small feat. They don't open their lives to just anyone, and those who do make it through their filters know they've passed one of the toughest tests of all, proving their motives are genuine. For Sigmas, anything less isn't worth the risk. Number 9. They're their own best company. For Sigmas, solitude isn't something to be avoided, it's something to be cherished. They've mastered the art of being their own best company, turning alone time into a source of strength rather than a gap to be filled. While most people lean on others for validation, entertainment, or a sense of purpose, Sigmas find all of that within themselves. They've built a life where they don't just tolerate solitude, they thrive in it. To them, being alone is a chance to recharge, reflect, and focus on what truly matters. It's when they're at their most creative, productive, and self-aware. They don't need constant companionship to feel complete, and the thought of someone invading that sacred space of peace and productivity can feel more like a disruption than a comfort. This isn't about being antisocial or cold. It's about understanding that their energy is precious and best spent on things that add value to their life. What makes this mindset so unique is that it's not rooted in bitterness or avoidance. Sigmas aren't hiding from people. They're simply choosing themselves first. They don't rely on external validation to feel worthy, which frees them from the exhausting need to constantly connect. Relationships to them are a bonus, not a necessity. This self-sufficiency can make others feel unneeded or even rejected, but that's not the case. Sigmas value meaningful connections deeply, they just don't require them to function. Their solitude isn't a lonely silence, it's a powerful symphony of self-contentment. And if you're lucky enough to be let into their world, know that it's not because they need you, it's because they genuinely want you there. For a Sigma, that's the highest compliment you can receive. Number 10. They struggle with emotional reciprocity. Sigmas are exceptional problem solvers and listeners when it comes to practical matters, but when it comes to emotional reciprocity, they can struggle. For them, emotions aren't something to be felt on the surface. They're something to be analyzed and understood. This often leads to a disconnect in situations where others expect empathy or emotional mirroring. If someone is upset, a Sigma might respond with a solution, a strategy, or a well-thought-out perspective. Anything but the comforting hug or sympathetic words many people crave. To a Sigma, emotions often feel like a puzzle to solve. They see someone crying, and their first instinct is to ask why the person is upset, what the root cause is, and how they can fix it. While this analytical approach can be incredibly helpful in certain situations, it's not always what people need when they're in an emotional state. Sometimes what's needed isn't a solution but someone to just be there, to offer empathy, and to mirror the emotion they're feeling. Sigmas, however, tend to bypass that, focused more on resolving the issue rather than connecting on an emotional level. This can easily lead to misunderstandings. To others, it might seem like Sigmas are cold or indifferent. In reality, they do care deeply, but they express that care in a way that can be difficult for others to understand. They may believe that offering a solution is the best way to help, but this can sometimes come across as dismissive or detached. At their core, Sigmas aren't trying to shut down emotions, they just have a different way of processing them. They don't naturally mirror feelings, but that doesn't mean they don't value the emotional bonds they form with others. They might not always offer the emotional validation people expect, but their way of caring is no less genuine. It's just expressed in a language that's uniquely their own. In the end, Sigmas aren't difficult to get close to because they lack the capacity for connection. They simply have a different way of navigating relationships. Their independence, self-sufficiency, and relentless pursuit of personal growth shape their interactions in ways that might seem distant or elusive to others. But behind their complex layers is a person who values depth, authenticity, and integrity over surface-level connections. They don't need the validation of others, nor do they seek constant companionship to fill a void. They're too busy cultivating their own path, evolving into the best version of themselves, and choosing only the connections that truly add value to their life. So if you find yourself trying to get close to a Sigma and struggling to break through, know this: it's not a rejection, it's a test of your own authenticity. They don't give their trust or time away freely, and that's exactly what makes the bond they do offer so much more meaningful. Sigmas are the rare few who don't settle for anything less than the truth, whether it's in their goals or in their relationships. If you're fortunate enough to earn a place in their inner circle, consider it an honor. It's not something they give lightly, but when they do, it's built on something deeper than the fleeting connections others often settle for. And that, in itself, is a rare and powerful gift. If you've enjoyed diving into the world of Sigmas with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss out on more in-depth, no-holds-barred insights like these that challenge the norm and go straight to the heart of what makes extraordinary individuals tick. Join the tribe, stay connected, and let's keep unraveling the mysteries of what makes the best the best. Trust me, you'll want to be part of this journey. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching, my ladies. See you in the next video. Bye for now, and God bless.